Really good. Welcome to your first day of this course. And what we're going to do in the next half an hour or so is really sort of try to unpack what education in you and the relationship you've had with it. And I think it's a really important one to sort of understand before we can move on and start looking to really take you to the next level. All right? So we're going to go visit my good friend Michel Foucault, one of my favorite philosophers, French, of course. And in his book, Discipline and Punish, he talks about the idea that is it surprising that prisons resemble factories, schools, barracks, hospitals, which all resemble prisons. So he's asking a very interesting question there. What is the relationship between all those different things? What are they trying to do to people? And what are these things doing to you? Going. All right, and that's a picture of a lecture that's being given in a prison. So you can see the setup looks fairly familiar. There's someone standing in front, much like myself. There's a bunch of caged people, not quite unlike yourself, sitting down there and watching what's going on. Schools, factories, hospital, prisons resemble each other because they examine pupils, workers, patients, classify them individuals, and get them to conform to a norm. So you would have gone through a series of activities in the last few weeks, or you might have read books on how to be a good university student and so on and so forth. And it's trying to give you an idea of what it is to be normal, so to speak. Right? What is good student practice in the university? How you engage, how you walk about, how to take notes, how to do assessments. All the stuff that Bronwyn's just spoken to you as well. It's all about trying to create a normalized version of what a student is supposed to be. Right? So looking at something like the submission grades, HDs, this, Ds, this, and so on and so forth, is all trying to give you a sense of what kind of standards you're expected to work within. So it's trying to exert something upon you, which is trying to make you conform to a very particular version of what we think, what the university thinks, what educationalists think is a good student. So in order to try to understand that, we have to understand where this is coming from. So this is a picture of a prison. So you see the watchtower, and you see all the cells around it, right? So people in the cells are doing their own thing. They can't see everywhere else, and there's a watchtower. But it's not an unfamiliar construct. This picture is a picture of, anybody know? State Library, the La Trobe Room. It's set up in the same sort of way where the central chief librarian could sit in the middle and watch everybody else and what they were doing without they being able to watch each other or watch him necessarily. So at any one point in time, you could get the sense that you're being watched. And what does that then do to you? So the idea we want to look at is known as disciplinary power. Disciplinary power regulates how you behave, how you engage in things. Now think about what's being done to you in the last few days. We are regulating the way you behave, the way you engage, particularly through how we organize a certain bunches of things. One of those things is space. So a building like this one we're in the Swanston Academic Building, which recently appeared in The Economist as one of the most awesome university buildings, and it is a great building. All of the spaces that you'll engage in have been designed very particularly to achieve particular type of outcomes. So this is not a conventional lecture theatre. This is a lecture theatre that's designed to allow for collaborative learning and so on and so forth. And as you walk through the building, you'll see beanbag rooms, you'll see cafe-style rooms, you'll see more traditional lecture theatres, you'll see spaces where there is no front of the room. So it's trying to destabilize the power relationship the lecturer has with the student. So we regulate how you behave through the way we organize space, through architecture, through time. Your timetable. It's trying to govern what you're going to do here. I know where you are going to be at various times of the week. I have the master timetable, so I know when first year lecture is, when second year is, when third year is, when your different tutes are. It's trying to do something to you, manage your behavior and make you move and work in certain types of certain times. The next thing is movement. All right, so buildings, space makes you move through the way things happen. So within the university, you're going to be moving between certain spaces. And those spaces that you move in are going to govern how you exist. So if you look at the super stop outside, there's only two ways to cross the super stop. So go outside later, look at the super stop carefully. It's designed to make you unable to cross the road except at 2 points, the start and the end of the super stops. In the middle, you have to take a jump up and a jump off, right? So the way the space is designed has an impact on the way you move. And finally, we talk about activity. We will govern what you do in the classroom. That's what the university is set up to do through all kinds of things, through the learning activities you do, through the assessments that you hand up. So you don't really have a choice in deciding how you're going to behave in the classroom because we will give you things to do. Now, I'm not saying what we give you is good or bad. I'm saying you need to be aware that what you're existing in the space you've come from, the high school, is a strictly designed space and is designed to achieve particular type of things. It works with complex systems of surveillance such as swipe cards, logins, closed-circuit television, tracking systems. All right? We don't have it here, but in our campus in Singapore, when students come in, attendance isn't taken, they have to swipe their card. That's how attendance is taken. So you have to meet the 80% attendance requirement. As a lecturer, I have no influence on whether you turn up or not. It's a question of whether you swipe your card. So the surveillance is done in a particular way. A MyKey card, if I have your MyKey card, I know exactly where you were, where you went, what time you went, and so on and so forth. If I have your phone, I can track you, right? So there's a lot of surveillance technologies that we engage in. If you log into the RMIT network, we know exactly which website you went to, for how long, what you did, and so on and so forth, right? Your expectation of privacy is very low there. So all these things are examples of ways of disciplining you, making you behave in predictable ways, in ways that we think are normal. So we want you to behave in those ways. And there's no real difference between a prison, a hospital, an asylum, school, or army barracks. All of these institutions are designed to impact on you, making you behave and do things in a normalized way. So how do we understand what we think is normal? Well, it's how we engage with our environment and how we communicate. And this is where communication design, I think, is quite exciting, right? So the way we communicate and the way we engage with space, the way we use things, all determine how we, what is normal, right? So going back to the example of the super stop, there is a normal way to behave at the super stop, that the super stop is designed, so it will encourage you to behave in a particular way and do particular things. Now, the interesting thing about disciplinary power is it's not coercive. It's not like state power, right? Policemen beating you up, arresting you, armies going to war, and so on and so forth. State power, it's very obvious. You can see it from a mile off, right? But disciplinary power is not repressive, it's not coercive, it's not dominating, it's not violent. But in fact, it's invisible. It's exerted upon you in ways that you have not even come to realize. All right? One of the examples we will look at during the week is things like traffic lights. And you'll get what I mean by that when we get to that. So how does disciplinary power work? We have a sense of what's normative behavior, what is a conventional way of doing things, how we're supposed to engage with people. We've learned that through the things that we watch, television, music we listen to, people we see other people behaving, the behavior that's modeled by your parents, your peer group, and your lecturers. We all have a role to play in that. And then we see, based on the knowledge we've acquired, how it is to be normal, how it is to be normalized. And you do that by self-disciplining. I'll explain a bit more in a bit. Foucault says it really well. He talks about discipline makes individuals. This is quite a confronting thing to think about on the first semester, first week. But the notion of the individual is a false construct. There is no individual. You all are subjects who have power exerted upon you to behave in particular ways. All right? And what we want to do is try to be able to sort of distill that out and find out what is impacting on us and what motivates our behavior and how it makes us move. So traditionally, power is what's seen, what's shown, and what's manifested. You could feel it, you could touch it, right? So, you can see these are various types of tortures that are done to people because that's the way power was exerted. If you did something wrong, if you tried committing regicide, trying to kill the king, you were drawn and quartered by horses, right? So the power of the state was very visible. But now as we've become more civilized, for the want of a phrase, disciplinary power is now working in much more seductive ways. It's much more invisible. So how does disciplinary power work? It works through two elements, surveillance and knowledge. So let's just say we'll deal with surveillance first, the gaze. So this is a drawing by Jeremy Bentham of a prison. And most prisons or designs of modern prisons, classrooms, hospitals, wherever you have to manage large populations, Jeremy Bentham's design has continued to have an influence. So these are more drawings of prisons. What's happening in the prison system? As a prisoner, all you can see is the guards. All you can do is see out into the guard tower. You cannot see your fellow inmate. You don't know what's happening in the next cell. You don't know what's happening in the cell above you, below you, and so on and so forth. You're isolated. But the guards can see you. And you are always visible to the guards. Try walking down Swanston Street from here to Flinders, and you can be tracked all the way by closed-circuit cameras. You're constantly being watched. You're always visible. Now, doesn't mean someone's watching you at that moment. That's key. Doesn't mean someone's watching you at the moment. But the fact that someone could be watching you is enough to make you modify your behavior. So you will not, hopefully, you will not be going up picking fights and glassing, I believe, people and so on the street, because you know there's cameras along the whole stretch. So you're going to be hyper aware of it. And you're not going to behave in ways that would bring distress to you. So inmates can see all the prisoners. Guards can see all the prisoners, but the prisoners cannot see anybody else. So prisoners never know if they're being observed. So they act in a way where they assume that they're being observed. You have to behave in that way. So you have to be self-disciplining. You have to watch yourself. So if you look at the design of a classroom, you all know what you're supposed to do. It's a very clear design. I'm the guard here and you are the inmates. And I watch all of you, and most of you can't see each other. Right? Even if you sit at the back of the room, all you see is the back of other people's heads. You can't actually see each other. So you know I can be constantly watching you. So if you were doing something inappropriate, you would be really worried whether I would see you or not. Even when I wasn't looking in your direction, you're not sure when that gaze might turn. Now with CCTV, I don't have to watch you, but I can rewind and find out what happened and so on and so forth. So it's kind of scary. So you have the feeling that you're constantly being watched. And that feeling is how we discipline ourselves, govern the way we behave. The classroom from your high school, kindergarten, and so on, is always designed to do that to you. You have been brought up in that system where you're constantly under watch. Some of you at home might have net nanny systems and so on and so forth to watch even what you do online. Your phones might be restricted. Parents might want access to your Facebook accounts and so on and so forth, right? A lot of different things are happening where you're constantly under surveillance, but it doesn't mean you need to be watched at all times. So what does the gaze mean to you? You need to be aware, as someone who's going to become a communicator, what the gaze is doing to you and what you, as someone who will then communicate to others, create normalized ways of being and thinking, the role and responsibility you have. So from the system you've come up through high school and prep and all the other systems that you have in Australia, there's a particular disciplinarity that's been going on, right? Through the physicality of the space, through the way you engage with the people in the space. And that has an impact on the way you behave. So all of you quite diligently came in and sat down quietly. You know your role. You assume the two people standing in front are your lecturers. You assume we are qualified. You assume the institution has done its job of making sure that we actually know what we're talking about. You've sat down with all these assumptions, not knowing for once if me and Bronwyn are even the real thing. So you've made a lot of assumptions, and you've made these assumptions repeatedly, right? So that's what's happened in the way this is set up. It's so familiar that when you come into this space, you know your role, and you know the expectations of your role. But you also know the expectations of the roles of others. And this has taken many, many years to discipline you into this way of being. The other way to think about disciplinary power is knowledge. Now we will explore knowledge a bit more over the second chunk of this course, I believe. We'll look at that in greater detail, but I'll talk about it briefly today. When we talk about disciplinary power and knowledge, we're talking about a body of knowledge that defines for us what is normal, what's acceptable, right? So this is a picture of a health test being done. They're measuring people against yardsticks of what is accepted. So I find it quite fascinating. Babies, right? So a lot of my friends are having babies. And having babies has created this really perverse competition between people who go, oh, my baby is 90 percentile in terms of height or weight or length or whatever they're measured. Or length, I think babies are measured.
Length, yeah.
Oh, my baby is 105%, so he's 5% taller than all other babies in this age, and so on. There is no real measurement. We're all genetically different enough. So this knowledge of, the body of knowledge that's been created over the last how many years of managing babies has created this percentile. So you get told you're in such and such percentile. So the body of knowledge defines what's right and wrong. So if I ask you butter or margarine, what would you say? It's not a complex question. Okay, I'll make a simpler question. If you're going to have a snack, would you grab a chocolate or would you grab an apple?
The designers are chocolate.
The chocolate.
The chocolate.
You know, what I'm trying to talk about is there's accepted norms around what we are supposed to do. So around nutrition and health, there's expected norms. Did most of you brush your teeth today? Why? Have you ever questioned if that's necessary, if that's actually a viable thing to do? How often you want to do it? A whole body of knowledge is created that then creates discipline to you or creates expectations that you're all supposed to perform to. So how did you get here? Right, let's talk about selection. How many applied total, Roman?
809.
So about 900 of you applied. A bunch of lecturers sat around and looked and shortlisted 200?
No,
Let's just say 200, doesn't matter.
290.
Okay? 300.
300.
And now the 300, they interviewed everyone. At each of this stage, the decisions made by these lecturers is based on a body of knowledge of what they think a good design student is supposed to be like. So you are getting judged even before you've got here. People have made decisions that you are the best. Of the 800 or 900 people that applied, you are the top 110 people, right? Almost 1 in 10 to get in. So you're 10%. How did they make the judgment? You see these kinds of things playing out constantly, right? Different types of knowledges are produced and made available to us. In this case, you're going to learn what it means to be a designer through this course. Me, Bronwyn, someone like David, Blair, and other people you'll meet have all sat around in a room and decided, you know what we really need to teach the kids? We need to teach them this and this and this and that. But we're not going to teach them this bit, but we'll teach them that bit. A lot of decisions have been made and it's constantly reinforced. So because we did it the year before and the year before and the year before, we keep moving forward and going, that's what we need to teach, that's what we need to teach. And that then creates a disciplined type of designer. So what we talk about, the RMIT Com designer, which is distinct, you would hope, from other com designers. I know this is a bit complicated to unpack, but what I'm trying to say is quite simple. That knowledge produces subjectivity, right? Knowledge produces the type of person that you're going to be, in this case, a designer. So this is a picture of a public cleaning campaign that was run in Singapore in the 60s and 70s, where civil servants were told to go on the weekend and clean the streets. They were expected to model behavior and learn to be clean. So Singapore is a very clean country now, but it's something that's been indoctrinated into people for many, many years in the physicality, but also in terms of all the other type of documentation you might reach. So each society has its idea of what is true. And this truth is generated through all the different communication that takes place. So you as communication designers have a very important role because you're going to help this country and other countries that you're going to work in understand itself and what it thinks is important. That responsibility should not be taken lightly. All right? This is something we'll come back to and explore in greater detail in the next few months. So when we talk about this knowledge in you, to understand that disciplinary power works in two different ways. One is through actual physicality and sort of the way space, time, and the accruements of an institution might work, but also in the way that we generate knowledge. So what am I trying to tell you here? Be suspicious. Be suspicious of me. Be suspicious of Bronwyn. Be suspicious of all your lecturers. Because for everything we teach you, there are things that we're not teaching you. You have to keep that in mind. You cannot get a complete education. Alright? It can't be done. At least if someone who's honest will tell you it can't be done. Because every time we choose to teach you something and we teach it again, we're making you think it's important, you will talk to next and you will talk to next. What's fallen away? Right? And we can talk about that more and more. So if I'm telling you that inherently you can't trust your lecturers, not trust, I said be suspicious. You can trust us, but be suspicious. Always be healthily skeptical, I think. You know, I always doubt everyone. It's not the healthiest mental state, but it helps, okay? So you want to always have a little doubt in your mind. You always want to be compelled to find out. So if I'm telling you that, where does that leave us? So I always think that education is designed to make us confront each other. It's a very adversarial relationship. All right? I am going to judge you and tell you you're a HD student, you're a D student, you're not good enough, and so on and so forth. It is set up in an antagonistic way. I remember a couple of years ago, I was teaching a course and a student came to see me because she was thinking she's not learning anything. So I don't feel I'm learning anything in this course. I don't know why I'm here. And we sat down, we had a chat. As we were chatting, she said, it's fun. And learning's never been fun. So to her, if something's fun and enjoyable, she's doing it and she's enjoying it, it can't really be learning. Learning was meant to be painful, meant to be hard, meant to make you uncomfortable. Now, learning is supposed to make you feel slightly uncomfortable. It's supposed to be challenging, but it should be fun. All right? So I don't like the idea of having a confrontational relationship with my students. I prefer to think of a more collaborative approach to education. Now, there's three ways you can have a university experience. All right? There's another way, which is get the paper. And if you're from Singapore like myself or Asia, you know what that means. You just go in and get the paper. That's all you need. So you can pass everything. It's not difficult. All right? If you came in half awake, you would pass everything. You'd get the degree. But that won't get you very far. All right? Okay? So that's not what we want. One way is to train. What is to train? Train is basically to do something over and over and over again. All right? That's training. To make proficient by instruction or practice. To treat and manipulate, to bring into direction. To form habits or behavior. You train dogs. You train kids, potty training and so on. Right? I am not interested in training personally. I have very little interest. So my advice to you always is if you want to train, like with art, right? Part of artwork is training. Technical skill is training. You don't come to university to learn that. You should be able to do that by yourself. Am I here to teach you? Impart knowledge. Give you all my great insights into the world. Make you, sort of think, wow, Terry's so smart. He's a sage, Impart knowledge or skills. Again, a relationship is defined by my power. I will give you the knowledge. I will give you the skill. And most of you have come from a system where the teacher is the sage in the room. You sit passively and wait to be told what you're supposed to know. All right? However, you're now in university and the game doesn't change. So I like to think about education to help you develop your faculties and powers of thinking, develop your cognitive skills, to learn how to be a lifelong learner, to continually challenge yourself. That's where we want to end up. All right? So as you go through this course, keep in mind, one, not everything you're going to learn is going to happen in the classroom. There's a lot more you can do outside. And we can talk about that over the next few weeks if you want to know more. Secondly, always come in with the mindset that you want to be educated. All right? You don't want to be trained because you're not a puppy or a baby. Teaching is not about us. Education, it's about you. All right? Something to think about. So what is the point of all this? The point of all this is quite simple. It's only when you truly understand the systems within which you're working and what is being done to you that you can then exert some kind of agency. By that I mean become free, right? If you don't understand what the education system is doing to you, if you don't understand what the architecture of the city is doing to you, if you don't understand what the architecture of the country, public transport, and so on and so forth is doing to you, you cannot actually then react to it. But once you become aware of it, you can start engaging and empowering yourself. And as Jean-Paul Sartre said, where man is condemned to be free. You have no choice but to free. I'm starting to preach, I'll stop. All right? But that's the kind of thing we want to talk about. So today's lecture is really about getting you to understand that the university system is not the same system you've come from. There are certain bits that are familiar and comfortable, and you've all engaged in that. But what you really want of that is, at the end of the day, to be the slightly disruptive, to be the one who, slightly irritating student that forces people to want to engage in a more interesting way. Just before I finish, maybe I'll scan that and put that on Blackboard. It's just something else I think that's really interesting. So that's from Paul Arden's book. It's not how good you are, it's how good you want to be. And he talks about the fact that going to school, traditional way of thinking about school, your job at school is to accumulate and remember facts. The more you remember, the better you do. And so on and so forth. All right? That's a very old way of thinking about education. That's not what we are about, and I'm quite glad to say I think generally that's not what RMIT is about. We tend to do things slightly differently. And I really hope over the next 12, 11 weeks, and semester 2, you're stuck with me for the whole year, we can start pushing that a bit more and trying to push where we're comfortable to go and learn to be truly free subjects. All right? Thank you very much.
As I said,